The world has shuddered at the unprecedented sanctions imposed by China, Russia, and Saudi Arabia on Israel in response to the recent attacks in Rafah. This landmark event could completely reshape the geopolitical landscape of the Middle East and become a turning point in the long-running Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The joint action of the three influential powers has sent shockwaves through the international community. For decades, they have taken different positions in this confrontation, but now their interests have unexpectedly coincided. China, consolidating its global influence, saw the sanctions as an opportunity to assert itself as a champion of human rights. Russia, a key player in the region, seeks to weaken Western dominance. And Saudi Arabia, despite its secret cooperation with Israel, has been forced to back down under pressure from its own population. The sanctions are multifaceted and aimed at maximizing pressure. They include trade restrictions, financial blockades, asset freezes, and travel bans for Israeli officials. Already, the fall of the stock market and the shekel has been noticeable. High-tech and tourism companies are on the brink of survival. Export shipments have paused or been canceled. Far more important, however, are the long-term consequences. Israel is losing access to the innovation and resources of three giant economies. Its status as a Middle East leader is threatened, and allies in the West are not rushing to its aid. The US and Europe have condemned the sanctions, but disagreement among them is evident. At the UN, there are calls for restraint and dialogue. At the same time, forces have emerged that welcome the sanctions. Human rights activists see them as a necessary measure against excessive violence in Rafah. Palestinian factions are using the situation to build unity and strengthen resistance. Hamas is exploiting the image of the victim of injustice. In the West Bank, too, tensions are rising. In Rafah, the situation is critical. The city has been destroyed and hospitals are overflowing with wounded. The humanitarian crisis is exacerbated by the blockade and the destruction of infrastructure. International organizations are trying to help, but access is severely limited. For Beijing, Moscow, and Riyadh, sanctions are a multi-pronged combination with far-reaching goals beyond conflict resolution. Ambitions, alliances, influence, and control of resources come into play. The escalation of tensions in the region is beneficial to many. However, sanctions are just another milestone in the growing trend to resolve disputes economically. States are increasingly using trade and financial leverage instead of military force. And the situation with Israel shows how globalization has intertwined the interests of different countries. The reaction of industries has been mixed. Defense companies are facing the cancellation of multi-million-dollar contracts. The high-tech industry fears loss of innovation and falling behind competitors. The energy sector is feeling pressure from Saudi Arabia and Russia, ready to capitalize on the oil and gas factor. Other players in the region like Iran and Turkey are looking to capitalize on the situation. Tehran sees the sanctions as a reaffirmation of its anti-Israel stance. Ankara under Erdogan may solidify support for the Palestinians. Within Israel itself, there is also a fierce debate. There are calls for a reassessment of approaches in Gaza, but there are also voices of the hardline opposition, which considers the sanctions unacceptable. The situation will only escalate in the coming months. Will Israel make concessions under pressure, or will it persist? Will China, Russia, and Saudi Arabia be able to remain united in their policies in the changing balance of power? And how will the other global centers of influence react? Developments will show how wide the geopolitical rift will become. So, sanctions against Israel are not just a response to the actions in Rafah. It is the beginning of a new era in the Israeli-Palestinian confrontation and in world politics. I urge you to follow the situation closely and analyze what is happening. I wish you peace, prosperity, and wisdom in these challenging times. Take care of yourselves and your loved ones.